I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting, of course, on the lands of the traditional custodians, the Gumbaynggirr people, and pay my respects to elders of yesterday, today and tomorrow. Say how much we value their contributions to the care of this country over time immemorial. And I'd like to also extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and particularly any that are with us here today. And finally, just to say that I am committed to honouring the unique cultural and spiritual connection of the Gumbaynggirr people to our land, rivers and sea. So welcome. It's wonderful to have so many people here to discuss, to learn and to prepare for possible future events. And unfortunately, as we're all aware, we're now likely to be experiencing the third successive La Nina event, something that hasn't happened many times in our recent recorded history. So it's very timely to be having this presentation today. We humans are social beings. You know, we are here independent on the actions of others. And there's hardly a moment in our lives where we do not benefit from others' activities. And so it's hardly surprising that most of our happiness is in the context of our relationships with others. Now, those words are from the Dalai Lama, who's a much wiser man than me. But I think they're very, very powerful and speak to the importance of connectedness, to our families, to our friends, to our neighbours and to our wider community. And, with all the trials and tribulations over the last few years that we're familiar of hearing now, the bushfires, the pandemic, the flood events, it's become even more apparent how important that connectedness, human connectedness is to all of us as individuals for our mental well-being. But not only that, if anything good came out of those dark times of the pandemic where social isolation was such a thing, through those enforced lockdowns. If anything good came of it, it did allow some research to go on into the impact of social isolation. And there's a very large study that was done across many cohorts through Europe and the United States that has really powerful data now that proves that not only does that social isolation affect our mental well-being, but actually affects us physically. We actually have a reduced immune response when we are in a situation of social isolation. So conversely, when we are connected to others and we are experiencing social interaction, our immunity is actually bolstered. So the one thing that we needed to do to protect ourselves from a novel virus, to isolate, was actually making it harder for us as individuals to fight it. So that's kind of weird. But my point is that we know definitely how important social interaction is to creating individual resilience. When we think about community resilience, although being dependent on the members of those communities having individual resilience, it's much more than just a sum of individual resilience. When we think of community resilience, we're thinking, particularly in times of disaster, we're thinking about the ability of that community to prepare for, to respond to, and to recover from those emergency situations. And we also have very, very strong data and research that shows that the most resilient communities are ones that have very strong networks pre-existing to those times. Social networks of community groups that are already in place and are active. That allows those communities to be nimble, to be agile, and to respond well in times of disaster, individually, as a community, and also in their ability to access external help in a timely fashion. So I want to congratulate you all for being here today, for taking this step to come to be interested in your community. I think what we're going to be presented with today is going to be very interesting, and hopefully we can build your community through this process. And this is something that I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to roll out through all of those areas throughout our shire that are affected by times of flood, times of fire. So thanks very much for being here, and I look forward to joining you in this session. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I was sitting there thinking, I don't think I can do it without my notes. And thanks a lot also for the acknowledgement of country. Is that better, Annie? Okay. So welcome, everybody. Just to let you know that you've all got a little mask on your chair and your kit, and you're very welcome to wear masks here. We don't have to, but we know that COVID and the flu's still around, and we've got a lot of people in the hall, and we don't want the Neighbourhood Care Network to be a super spreader event. So feel free to mask up if you'd like to, and take the mask home with you for another time if you don't. I think most people will know where the loos are, so I don't sort of need to do the housekeeping thing. They're all open. I do want to invite you to hang around afterwards and join us for a sausage sizzle. Really grateful to the Lions who are sizzling the sausages and the falafel as we speak. So that's just down, I think, where the bar is during the show. That's right, isn't it? Not that I know much about the bar during the show, but I just want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do for the next hour together, and then I'll be your sort of MC to help us keep going through the next hour. We're going to talk a little bit about the NCN and why we're here, and then there's going to be some presentations initially from Tracy Kimber, who is the reason why we're here, really. She had a real strong desire to bring people from Lower North Bellingen together so that we were a bit more prepared when we face a big flood. So she's going to talk a bit as a resident who grew up here about why she thought this was so important. We're then going to have a bit of a display from Ian of some maps that we've worked on that shows everybody what the impact on North Bellingen is at different levels of inundation, and also some historical photos. And then we're going to open up, we're really pleased to see so many locals here, because we're going to open up for a bit of an open discussion where we're really keen for people who've lived here for a long time to share their stories of historical floods, share any, concerns or issues or things that you would like done. And we've got a roving mic, and we'll have about 20 minutes for that discussion. And then we'll finish off with a presentation from Strider, who heads up the Bellingen SES unit, with some really useful and interesting information. And then we'll break for sausage sizzle. So that's the sort of lie of the land for the next hour or so. I guess I just want to talk a bit about the Neighbourhood Care Network. We limped along as volunteers, really, with a few small grants and a lot of support from Bellingen Council to get us going since the beginning of the pandemic. When we first set up, we were trying to help local groups set up local neighbourhood groups so people could reach out and help each other through the pandemic. But we since got a lot of positive feedback about that model, and we've pivoted a bit to a same sort of thing, helping the community set up small local neighbourhood groups that are doing disaster preparedness and recovery preparedness together. We know that we're seeing more frequent floods and more frequent bushfires, and I don't know about you, but I got the fright of my life through the 2019 bushfires, and I wasn't even living anywhere really close to them. But it really reinforced for us and the other people involved in the Neighbourhood Care Network that we need to do whatever we can to get ourselves prepared and take as much responsibility as we can as a community, because no matter how many resources are thrown at emergency services. If a lot of things are happening at once, there's never going to be enough emergency services to swoop in and just save us. So that's the sort of ethos behind the Neighbourhood Care Network. We've been funded by the Healthy North Coast Primary Health Network for 12 months to really have a good crack at setting this up across the Bellingen Shire and surrounding areas. This is the first time we've partnered with the SES to run a public meeting like this, so please be kind to us. And if we do some things that you don't like, please let us know that, because we really want to keep improving as we go. But that's a bit about who we are, and we're going to do a big pitch to really encourage all of you to sign up with the Neighbourhood Care Network. We, particularly in terms of North Bellingen, we're going to be asking people who live on higher ground, who might be able to put themselves, put their hands up to help people pack up and prepare for floods, or help them unpack after a flood, or might be able to billet people, get a real contingent group of people on standby on the north side who can help. So that's a good reason to sign up, but also because we now do have the capacity to support local groups to form right across the north side, so we can all help each other. So more about how you can do that at the end. So with that, with the housekeeping, I forgot to say, could everyone just pop their phones on silent, please? That'd be great. That was a nice reminder. Also, just a couple of other housekeeping things. We're filming this session because we want to make it available for other people on our website. So if you don't want to be in the film, please come up and let me or one of the other people who have got Neighbourhood Care Network badge on, or Mark, who's doing the filming, know, and we'll make sure we edit you out. We'll probably take a photo of you. So we've got a record and we make sure that we don't pick you up. We'd like to take a few photos that we can use for future social media and other publicity. So again, if you don't want to be in any of those photos, please let us know. If you're not comfortable about that, that's fine. And I think that was everything I had to say at the beginning. Is that right, Jane? Ian? Okay, great. So with that, again, welcome, and I'm really pleased to introduce, I'm sure most of you know Tracy. Can't see Tracy. Excellent. Who's the coordinator of the Lower Bellingen Local Neighbourhood Group, to kick us off. And Annie, you're going to give us a hand, aren't you?
I'm just turning that mic off now, because then you might see me shaking so bad. Do you want some water?
Yeah.
It's not working until I get back to the desk.
Okay.
You'll be right.
Oh, it is. Oh, no.
You're all going to be really kind to us, aren't you? See, they're all friends.
I just look at you.
And the closer you get, the better
All right.
we're going to hear you,
All right.
because we know you've got some great stuff to say. You go back a long way in this town, huh?
All right. And it's not because I'm lazy, it's just because you'll see my shaking less if I'm sitting down. I'm always up for a yarn, but put a microphone in front of me and it's a whole different story. So I'm Tracy Kimber. A lot of you will know me, born and bred in Bellingen in 74, raised up on the hill up here, so watched lots of floods. In saying that, I was born in 74. I haven't seen a big flood in Bello, but obviously through talking to elders and living here that long, certainly got a reverence for what can happen in a flood. Back when I was a kid, I think we sort of had a flood usually around once a year, usually around showtime. And as we all know, we're now, I think, how many have we had this year? 3, 4 already this year. So certainly I'm noticing they're increasing. So the last flood scared me a little bit in that watching, I'm over here in Hammond Street, so I'm actually in a fairly high house, 2-storey, and Travis came around and evacuated us, and I said, no, that's all right. Look, it was hit the bottom of the bricks, so it was probably at about 8.3. And I thought, no, I'm all right, I'm high. And I said to Travis, I'll just stay home and we can reassess this afternoon and see whether I need to get out and you can boat me out. And he went, we haven't got a boat. So at that point, and look, a lot of people probably giggled at me and thought that I was overreacting, but I got my cat and I got my kid and I got out and I went and stayed with friends on the hill. What I did notice was a lot of people either didn't evacuate or came home while we were still under an active evacuation order. With a separate hat, I work for DCJ, so I was sitting up at Dawnsong where we do the evacuation centre. And getting some messages from the Emergency Operations Centre with the weather alerts and things. So what I was hearing from the DCJ side of things was we are on high alert. There's a big low sitting off the coast. You can't shut the evac centre. We're actually being asked to set more up. But by then the water had gone down a little bit and everybody came home. So I was exhausted. We'd evacuated the neighbours at 4 a.m. or something like that. I had previously... So the night before, I put my 2 camphor chests in the car and parked up the prov. So that's my preparation. I know what needs to go in the car and I'm out. I rang my boss at DCJ and said, look, I've got to go and get some sleep. So I headed back to Mr. and Mrs. Murphy's place. As I drove through the roundabout though, you know, I'm thinking I'd set an alarm for 10 p.m. because they thought that the low was going to hit at about 11:30. And I just sat up there and shook my head as I drove past because had it hit... there would have been, I think there probably would have been loss of life. There certainly would have been really big concerns for all those people that had come home. You wouldn't have got out through Hammond Street. You wouldn't have got out through Black Street. I had one family saying, oh, but we were watching the water and we were up every half an hour, but I'm not sure what they were going to do, whether they were going to swim out with the kids on their back. It's that really worried me. So afterwards I was sort of like, well, what can I do? A lot of people I think just they don't understand what the risks are, which was when I saw the Neighbourhood Care Network sort of calling out for people to help with the coordination of these kinds of groups. So that was me getting on my little high horse on it. Oh, that was the other thing too. I was on Facebook going, oh, I don't know whether to get out or whether to stay because I'm up so high. And all my friends in Lismore were like, just get out. So I think that was also in the back of my mind. So yeah, that's why I'm here. I'd like to see some preparedness. As a community in Bello, we'll always look after one another anyway, but if we've got a plan and everybody knows where they're going, a lot of people I heard came back because they were like, oh, I didn't want to impose on anybody. So if we can get a really secure billeting system organised where you know where you're going to go, you know those people are happy to have you, grab the kids, grab the cat, and you know, feel comfortable about leaving your home. Insurance is through the roof for this area, but at the end of the day, there's nothing more you can do for your home anyway. Whether you're sitting in it while it goes under or whether you're safe will make no difference. You can only prepare and get out and make yourself safe. I guess the other thing to add to, like I say, I don't want lives lost. People that haven't been here for a long time might not understand that we've buried friends, people have buried children, we've buried fathers, we've lost people to these floodwaters. I see kids walking across the bridge, or even people down there when it's a fairly significant flood and the kids are up to their knees in the water. A log takes out their feet and they're gone. You're not going to get your kids. So I think there's probably just a lack of understanding that worries me, and I worry that we will lose people if people don't get organised. Then I get to my worries, which I just said. So we haven't had a flood over 9 metres since 74. So I think the biggest I've seen is 8.8. I had a lot of people talking about the 2001 and 2009. They were maximum 8.8. So yeah, nothing, 9.5 in 74. 1950 was 10.4, and Bob Hudson's here. Bob was talking to me the other day about that one. That took Hammond Street out. So everybody was inundated at Hammond Street. It'd be interesting to see what a flood that big would do to Dowell Street, because those houses didn't exist in 1950. All the bitumen from Hammond Street ended up over here in the showground. So those are the sorts of things that you've not seen in an 8.8 flood or a 9 flood that can absolutely happen. Every flood is different as well. You know, sometimes even I've been home again 4 years now, and sometimes you look around, the water's laying in different spots, and it depends what the stormwater drains are doing. So I think some people have this confidence in knowing what's going to happen, and I think that's a false confidence. rainfall surges, and particularly now. So somebody was saying the other day that the weather conditions at the moment, with the third La Nina and this Indian Ocean dipole, whatever that is, are exactly replicating the 1974 floods. So we're already sodden. I don't know if anybody remembers about a month ago where the water came up overnight and just lapped the bottom of the bridge all day. That happened in 4 hours. So the water was at normal levels at 1 or 2 a.m. and by daylight it was lapping the bottom of the bridge because we're just that sodden. So the other thing that will park for follow-up, I think what's happened as well is a lot of buyers are just not aware. So people that have come in the last 15 or 20 years are not aware of the flood risk. I've heard several stories of properties that are obviously flood prone and been bought by people who had no idea that they were flood prone. I don't know how true it is, but I've been told that the real estate agents will take the flood markers down. So maybe, Steve, if we can get some more hardcore, hard to remove flood markers, people might have a bit better understanding. So I don't think people are making how do I put it? I think it's people are uninformed. I think a lot of people that have been here 15 or 20 years, it's just that they don't know what can happen. So my goal was to make sure that people actually are making informed decisions. And if we're a bit more prepared, we know where we're going, we've got a plan, just take some of that panic out of it and just do what we've got to do at the time so that we know everybody's safe. I guess the other point, like that last flood, if that low had a hit, it would have been the middle of the night. And while you're all well and good and you're waking up every half an hour to check the water, it's the fireys and the SES who are going to risk their lives to try and get you and your kids out of your house. So that's something that I find a bit frustrating as well. People have got a right, I guess, to take a risk, but I don't really respect the right to take a risk with my community when it comes to our volunteers who will, regardless of what you say, they will come in and try and get you out, you know. So think about them as well. And I think that's all I had to say. I think I was just raised, even though, like I say, I haven't seen a big one, we were raised with a reverence for the water. You know, flood time, it was danger time, it was fun, but you didn't go in the water, you knew the power of it, and I feel like that's something that's maybe missing right now. So I'm just hoping that people sort of get a better understanding and more of a reverence for what can happen and just how powerful those floodwaters are, so that we're not burying more friends, children, fathers in the years to come.